Hey, welcome back to 7 Minute Stories, and we are back here with Jordyn Morrisson.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are
You're
you?
back for round two.
Oh, yeah.
So if you have not tuned in, I think it was like you were like on one of the first like 6 episodes of the podcast. You were early on.
I don't think so. I think it came out recently.
Did it?
Yeah.
We taped, like you were one of the first people to tape.
Oh,
Maybe I
yeah.
held on to it for a long,
I think
long
you
time.
did.
All right. Well, today we're going to talk a little bit more about your story, and you're going to tell us about what's going on and where you've been versus where you are now. So, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Take it away.
All right. So, the thing that I feel like doesn't get talked about a whole lot with going from not growing up in a church, not really knowing literally anything, to the complete 180 flip of now you're so deep in it and you have learned so much, having that complete life change. I feel like the struggles of it don't get talked about that much. Like, yes, it's very good to focus on how much good God has done for you in your life and the complete change of how you used to think, how you used to act, how you used to handle situations, all that. That's awesome. But I also feel like from like my personal experience, I also felt very behind in a lot. I would see people who grew up through church. They've known it since they could talk, since they can comprehend words. And
We have our own lingo.
yes, exactly. And I just felt like I was so behind. I was like, I can hardly read 4 words in the Bible. I don't understand what half these mean. Like, just little things that I was like, I'm so far behind from everyone else. There's no way, like, God likes me the same as them, or you know what I mean? Like, constantly thinking that he doesn't love me the same, or I'm just at a lower level when we're all truly equal. And not giving myself enough credit for how much I know and for how much I've learned.
What do you think in that journey was giving you that perception? Is it the way that people talk, or they say like, oh, like in Sunday school growing up, like what do you think it was? What were some of the tip-offs?
I think for me it was more of like when people, a big one for me is like when people talk about like, oh, I heard from God, or like God told me, like things like that. And I was like, how? But like, how'd you hear it? Like, how did it come to you so quickly?
Does he have an accent?
Yeah, exactly. It's just little things that are very small, but they still make you think. You're like, well, that doesn't happen with me. So like, do I get to that point where it just happens like this? But even then, like most people, things don't just happen with the snap of a finger, but you say it, and so, but you actually like thought about it like last week or something, if that makes sense.
I've talked about that a lot. Where in one of our next groups, like somebody said that they're like, and then God told me this, and I went, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like how many? And I had people raise their hand. How many people think that she heard an audible voice from heaven? And everybody raised their hand. And I was like, what was that actually like? And she said, it was a certainty outside of myself. And then I was like, now how many of you have experienced that? It was like, oh yeah, I've experienced that. And it's like, but we church it up, and it makes people feel bad.
Oh yeah. And like, it's just different. You think you hear the voice in your head all the time of like yourself or whatever that is, but then you think it's going to be the same thing, and it's completely different. So like for me, I just felt like I wasn't hearing it when I just didn't know what it was, if that makes sense.
Well, now that you kind of are tuned into that, what are some examples of the ways that you have, quote unquote, heard from God?
It's kind of hard, but like the way I think about it a lot is, kind of, I feel like how most people should view it is like, if it gives you like anxiety, it gives you discomfort, it's probably not from God. Now, if it's like pushing you to be closer to God, or like putting you out of your comfort zone a little bit, I feel like that's a little different. But most of the time it's calming, and whenever I hear something, I don't have to second guess it. Like I automatically don't. I almost like reply instantly without thinking. And then I'm like, oh, I didn't really think that. Because I'm going to say overthink a lot about little things, analyze everything. So like when I first started, I was very confused, and I would hear something and be like, wait, is that me? Or is that God? Or is that Satan? Like, I don't know who else is there, Yeah. So it just, for me, it depends on what it is. And
for you, is it words? Is it pictures? Is it feelings?
I feel like it changes every day.
Yeah.
Depends on what kind of situation I'm in. Like if it's just me, it's words and like slight feeling. If it's like I'm praying for somebody, it can be a strong feeling or a vision. Like it just depends on how he wants to show himself, I guess, like through me. And that sounds so hard to like explain, I guess.
No, it is. And it's hard to pay attention when that happens and not go, oh, that was some random thing.
Like the amount of words that you get like in a prayer session and you're like, okay, God, like give me something, like, and you get like peanut butter and you're like, okay, what? That was definitely my head, but it doesn't go away and it keeps knocking at you and it's like, hey, come on, you can say it. And then you're like, you say it and then they're like, yeah, that makes sense. Like that hits and you're like, okay.
Except then you're like, God keeps saying peanut butter. And they're like, I stole a can of peanut butter one time and I felt so guilty about it. And you're just like, oh my gosh, you know, like, that's so terrible. Sorry.
Yeah.
God wants to forgive you from that. You're fine.
Exactly. It's so hard, which I'm glad that I understand this now, that it's so hard to generalize it in the aspect of, oh, it only happens one way, because it happens differently for everyone in many different ways. Mm-hmm. And so I just feel like sharing with people the fact that it's not going to happen overnight and it's going to come in different waves and different ways, if that makes sense. Waves and ways. You just have to be patient and like actually know that he's communicating with you even when you're not paying attention. And that's taught, like, knowing that has helped me a lot. And like I've grown a lot with my patience and my grace and for people and myself even. So he truly helps whenever it comes to me doubting, like, oh, I don't hear from him. It's like, yeah, you do. You just aren't paying attention a lot of the time.
Yeah, we think it's ourselves. We think it's random thoughts.
And it's like the smallest of things even. Like, you know, do this instead of this. And it's the slightest thing. Or there's the big things. But, you know, it's just, I feel like a lot of people, like I said, they feel like it's just them. Because I went from the complete, you know, not knowing anything, partying, all this and that. And now I'm like, don't hang out with the same friends a lot. And like, I don't, you know, party all the time. And I'm, you know, a hermit.
Yeah. How's that adjustment been? Like, we're talking about like that adjustment from going from one extreme to the other. How's that adjustment been?
You know, honestly, it was a lot easier than I was anticipating. There were some things that I thought were going to be way harder, but they actually were a lot easier whenever I know that I have the knowledge of this is what it's like without God, and then this is what it's like with God, and like deep into it. So I am very thankful that I have that knowledge of both sides of the spectrum, I feel like is the way I describe it. And I now know that I would not change anything. Like I want to continue to go with God because I know what it's like on the other side, I guess, and like living in sin and sadness 24/7. And I don't ever want to do that again. I don't want to wake up and have to question if happiness is even an option for me, if I'm ever going to get to that point, because now I know I get to wake up every day and I live in that, and that Jesus is there and I'm never alone. And like, it's so hard to not go on the rampage about it, but I just know that deep in my heart, I've seen both sides, and I would much rather pick God's side, whether it's boring or not cool like everyone says. But I'm way happier of a person. I live in so much more peace. And, you know, for some people it's hard. For some people they have like strong addictions and they're just are afraid of being judged. But I was to the point where I didn't care. I was like, this is going to be the new Flip. This is how I want to live my life. And the people that want to be in it will be in it. The people that don't want to, they won't. Yeah. And that's just how it's going to be. Not everyone's going to want to stick around. And I'm okay with that, because I have the people that truly support me, and I have Jesus and God. And like, that doesn't get much better than that, I feel like. So
yeah. It's weird where it's like I've grown and I'm a better person, and people are like, yeah, I don't want to hang out with you anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I'm sorry that I don't find a bottle of alcohol fun anymore. Like, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm like, I like being a little hermit. I go to school, I go home.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming in. Like I said, I think that's an important thing to talk about. I know you're talking about that as in a, going from one extreme to the other.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that a lot of our listeners out there, whether they've been in the church for their whole lives, they feel that thing where they feel, inadequate, or they feel like, oh, I'm not hearing from God, or even, I want someone else's anointing or someone else's revelation.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, God has something for you.
Exactly.
So I've been really proud of you. Like I said, I've got to see the growth. So I know you're like, well, I'm like, you're doing great. So
Thank you.
It's been fantastic to watch you grow.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks for joining us, guys. We'll see you guys next time on 7 Minute Stories.